Hello, everyone. Welcome to More Than a Muse podcast. My name is Sadie.
I'm Stani, and welcome.
We have a fun topic that we're gonna finally take a stab at.
Yes. About time. I feel like ever since me and you have read The Feminine Mystique, this has been coming. But just some things lately online tipped it over the edge, and we're like, let's talk about Tradwives.
Let's talk about Tradwives, which, if you're unfamiliar with the term, traditional, right? That's where wife comes from, a traditional wife. And it's very much associated with the more traditional values of woman stays home, cooks, clean, doesn't work, man takes care of her. I don't know. Is that it? I don't know. I guess that's what we'll talk about today.
Which I think we can speak to is growing up as conservative Christians. Did you expect your life to turn out a little bit more like that lens for a while?
Definitely. Or I think that was more the only lens that I actually thought was possible.
Yep.
It's the only thing I'd ever seen.
I still remember getting told that a graphic designer would be a good mom job. And I was like, mom job? It was like, a career that you can have while you also stay at home full time with children. It was like,
exactly. Yeah. I feel like that is always with like my music aspirations. It was like, oh my gosh, it's going to be so awesome because you can be a voice teacher from your home. And, you know, you can raise your kids from the house. And not to say that's like an oppressive thing that happened, but I did feel like it like definitely affected the framework that I like viewed my potential future for a really long time.
Same.
It was just like, oh, that's just what the options are. You just find a job and you make sure that it doesn't go outside of being at home with your kids 100% for the rest of your life, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So very interesting. And now here we are. Neither of us have children, but
yeah. And now we are in our late 20s and neither one of us have children.
The shocking.
We're both working full time, very career driven.
And we have a feminist podcast where we're
feminist podcast.
We're going to critique Tradwives.
Critique the Tradwives. And listen, no hate, no shade to the stay-at-home moms out there. Listen, I want to have children, and I hope to have children relatively soon in my life. And I also recognize that when you have children, maybe things change a little bit, and that's okay. You have to be reasonable with the choices you make, and if you're going to bring a child into this world, I think you need to do your best to do the very most for them. But also,
definitely,
that can look so different than what I think I always thought that it had to be.
And I think there's a lot to be said about just this movement online and the romanticization of it, and a lot of things that are happening with it that are making it seem more appealing than maybe it actually is, and which I think is mainly what we're talking about today. That and just the pipelines that have led a lot of women online into the Tradwife lifestyle, kind of without them thinking about it beforehand.
No, I think that's such a good point. This is very much a critique of the Tradwife, the hashtag Tradwife, of how it's being represented online, and like you said, how that's not exactly a real portrait of the traditional wife. That's, first off, let's just acknowledge the fact that they're probably making thousands and thousands of dollars from their online thing. That's not traditional at all. So by making money online, you're not being a traditional wife. So anyways, I know we'll talk about it more, but just a little caveat there.
Definitely. There's a lot of articles about this online, first off. Millions, like so many. So we just pulled a few. One that I found that was interesting was a New Yorker article about Elena Kate Petite. Is that how you say her name?
I think so.
And she was one of the like original OG Tradwives. She was self-proclaimed. She became really popular in 2020 and when BBC News Video discussed her ambition to serve her husband. Her desire long predated that moment, and she would do all of the things. She stayed at home to cook, care, and clean, and talked about how that was shaped many years ago, even saying, if you put me in a time machine back to the 50s, I'd have it made. Everyone would be asking me when I'm going back to work. But she was very happy with her domestic rituals and the life that she was living. However, as it goes on through the article, it talks about how she wrote a lot of books, actually, about etiquette and society and the traditional housewife era that she was living. She ended up escaping from the Tradwife lifestyle over time and is no longer online. So it was interesting. It even talks about in her book, English Etiquette in 2019 that she wrote, she talks about that marriage might be a partnership, but there will always be one top dog. In a traditional English family, that job is occupied by the father. The husband pays the bills and supports the family in strength and defense, making him the head of the household. The wife supports his decisions, assuming they are made fairly. When I asked her to expand on the point, she used the analogy of a company. It's basically like trusting the finance manager to help you run your business. And then she attracted a BBC film crew that showed her ironing his shirts, standing in the kitchen, decorating with British flag bunting while explaining how they split the roles in their marriage. She appeared on a popular UK breakfast show, and she would talk about how she would consult her husband before buying a sofa. And the host was aghast that, oh, I can't believe you would do that. Which, come on, is that really that weird?
I was
It's a
gonna say,
pretty big purchase.
I feel like that's a fair thing, but don't make me side with her. But I'm like, seems valid. I don't know.
Yeah, I would consult someone else living in my house about
In the
buying a
home.
sofa.
Yeah.
But anyway, but she never actually used the term tradwife, but it became linked with her, including her marriage sparking outrage with newspaper columnists and viewers, someone calling it a frilly version of fascism, and people writing about how everyone was becoming very down with the message that white women should submit to their husband and focus on making as many white babies as possible, which is the politicized version of all of this. And she did clap back at that, saying that she had an apron-clad army fighting back against the haters, saying that she was a part of a community of women who were from a vast array of ethnicities, cultures, and faith beliefs, and we all have a good laugh at this nonsense. It's not racist or overly conservative to want to be a good housewife and mother. It's just common sense. However, it has become very overtly racist and conservative with the Tradwife movement. It's become a hashtag. It's become, she said, by 2022, the new generation of Tradwives is getting younger and more polished than realistic. There's a shift in the movement from being something that the community talked about intelligently to having it hijacked by others for notoriety or fame. The movement appeared to be turning into something between a money-making exercise and the amped-up kink version of cottagecore with political and religious overtones. You'll think of Hannah Nealon immediately comes to mind, Ballerina Farm, where she sells multiple products, including subscription meat boxes, sourdough kits, and 3 bags of farm flour for $39. It also has 9 million followers on Instagram and close to 7 million on TikTok, and has even been described as the new Kardashian for her influence. So even though that this woman started out initially thinking and being like this pioneer of the Tradwife movement, it slowly got out of hand very quickly and became very political, leading to her actually leaving the internet completely. And she said that it made her a very different person. She's even watched Barbie and loved it, smiled to the point my face hurt, she said, and has been begging her husband to see it. And I thought this was really interesting. She said they were moving cross country. Her son's growing up, soon to start high school, becoming independent. She said, I might go back to work. I've always wanted to open a coffee shop. She and Carl could get divorced, she said. No one knows what the future holds. I just choose the path of happiness for my family today and for right now rather than worrying about the future, and have protected myself financially should death or divorce occur. That's what smart traditional women do. Here she answered the winking emoji. Perhaps that's not really trad at all.
There it is. Yep. Okay. So many things we can talk about here. First off, I think we've talked about Ballerina Farm before, and she went viral a couple years ago with the egg apron that her husband bought her when she really wanted a vacation. And then she did that piece about how she gave up being a ballerina to get married and have children. And she came out and talked about how she didn't feel like that was an accurate portrayal of what her situation was, because it was definitely like an article that was there to critique it and not necessarily be like pro her family. Most recently, we've had Princess Treatment go viral on TikTok. That woman who
which we'll
is
be
demanding
talking
that.
more about too. Yeah.
I feel like this also reminds me of the women who will make stay-at-home wife content, stay-at-home girlfriend content, and all of these things, where that last thing that you said, where this woman woke up to realizing, I can't predict the future, so I have to be able to protect myself. Here's the thing, I'm not saying like go into every marriage with a prenup. I can understand people not wanting to do that. You know, you don't do a marriage anticipating that a divorce is, that you feel like you love and trust that person. Hello. That can all be true, but also, like, you don't know what could happen in the future. And, like, why would you set yourself up to be completely destitute and reliant on a man? Like, and she said
Mhm.
it's not traditional. If any piece of it turns into a business like Ballerina Farm, like Ballerina Farm isn't a traditional wife. First off, they're
No.
homesteading. That's crazy. But she's a businesswoman. She's posting online constantly. Like, it's
She's
not
their
actually
main
Tradwife.
the main
The main
source of
breadwinner.
income for them
Yes.
is her. She's the one making the money, and anyone who says
Mhm.
anything else is ridiculous. Their dairy farm wouldn't exist without her
Without
Instagram account.
her.
She is the moneymaker for the family. It's the least traditional thing in the world. It's just that they've found a way that it fits the aesthetic of
It's a
it
costume.
being a
Yeah.
traditional household. But she's the
Mhm.
one doing all of the work.
All of them. Yes,
All
which
of
is
it.
another thing that we that poor I mean, here's the thing, I'm sure she's a lovely woman, I'm sure she's so happy with her choices, but there's just a lot to unpack there, okay?
Yeah, there is, which I thought was so
Oh,
interesting about this article, and just the idea that, like, maybe it's just not as romanticized as even
yeah,
the people who are within it are thinking at the time.
totally.
That there's
Yes.
just so much more to it than just being, like, a stay-at-home mom and
Mhm.
having the father be the breadwinner. And yeah, so it's just interesting. Speaking, like, personally, I got divorced. I was not
Yeah.
working at the time. I was in school. I had nothing. I had to take out a
Mhm.
bunch of student loans in order to finish out the semester because I hadn't been working because I
Yeah.
was just focusing on school. And I wasn't even like a stay-at-home wife or anything. I wasn't
Mm.
even doing that.
You're
Like
a full-time student.
I had marketable skills, but I had not been employed. And it happened in the middle of the pandemic as well. So it's just you have to prepare yourself. Like, even if you don't end up divorced, if your husband dies, then what are you gonna
Yeah.
do?
Mhm.
And there's just a lot of reasons why this is a scary trend.
It is a scary trend too, because also, like we said, like the glamorization of it and not showing it for what it really is, which isn't traditional. Nothing about it is traditional. So to call it that and then say, "Oh, so you should be doing this too." Like you are just setting up other people for failure or for realizing that like this isn't actually going to provide maybe the same fulfillment that you claim it does. Because yeah, I bet it's fulfilling to you. You just scaled $1 million business. Or like all these other women like making doing brand deals and like everything. It's like that's not being a trad wife. That's I don't know. It's
Nope.
just not.
That's being a social media influencer with a very specific
Yeah.
aesthetic. Thought it was interesting too. You brought up the princess treatment. I wrote down some pipelines of what gets people
Yeah.
into the Tradwife movement. One of them could be like hobbies. Sourdough is
Mm.
like a common one. Homesteading, off-grid living, sewing,
Mhm.
gardening, wellness culture, or like eating clean. There's a
Yeah.
point where you get so crunchy left that all of a sudden you turn alt right,
Yep.
which is a really fascinating thing. Detoxing, raw milk, anti-vax, all of that kind of leads into that. And then hyper femininity or embracing your feminine energy, which
That's another one I've seen so much of, like, your
stay-at-home
inner
girlfriends. Yep.
natural femininity and all of that.
Yep. So, should we talk about these pipelines a little?
I
And
would
then
love
we can go
to,
back into?
yes.
There's a Medium article called No, You Are Not a Tradwife Just Because You Like to Cook or Crochet, which
Yes.
I think is very important because let's be
Mhm.
honest, a lot of those hobbies, very fun.
Very fun, of course.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that you're a trad wife, even if you're the one cooking the meals for the family. If you like
Mhm.
to make your own clothes, it doesn't suddenly turn you into a trad wife.
Yeah.
And one of the issues with this is it's weaponizing supposedly gendered activities,
Mm.
saying that certain activities are male or female. And we've even seen this within the arts a ton. So,
Mhm.
okay, painting can be more feminine, but then we need this one to be more masculine. So,
Yep.
music production can be more masculine, but
Mhm.
voice needs to be more feminine. And
Yep.
why on earth are we doing that with things that literally have no gender,
Oh,
have no
mhm.
requirement for a certain gender in order to do it? And that's one of the things about the Tradwife narrative is that it manipulates the narrative into making you think that certain activities are feminine and certain activities are masculine. And therefore, the feminine activities need to fall in the household to the women and the masculine activities need to fall to the men. including the hobbies.
I think it's so interesting, just like these different pipelines, because they're inherently good things. Like, it's good to learn to be more self-sufficient, to cook your own meals. It's awesome to learn how to clean, sew your own clothes, grow your own food, be conscious of what you eat. Like, they do all start as good, healthy things. And I'm really just so fascinated. Like, even the clean girl aesthetic has been watered down to turn into this like weird alt-right pipeline. And I cannot figure out why. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know if it starts, like, putting in you, like, "Oh, I can't trust this system or have to do this all myself," and then does that turn into some type of rejection of society or, like, community?
Kind
I
of,
don't
yeah.
know.
It's interesting. I watched a YouTube video from Courier, and it was talking about the Make
Mhm.
America Healthy Again movement and why on earth, like Clean Girl and all of that has led to all of a sudden people drinking raw milk and all
Mhm.
sorts of things like that. And it was interesting. She talked about how like maybe the political spectrum is more of a horseshoe than a straight line. And you can
Oh,
get to the
okay.
point where you're so far left that all of a sudden you become right wing. And it's like the
Yeah.
crunchy moms used to be like a very
Mhm.
left leaning thing where it would be like, oh, we don't want chemicals in our food. So we're going to make everything organic and get
Mhm.
organic fruits and vegetables. And we're going to drink oat milk instead of cow's milk. And we're going to go vegan and we're going to go vegetarian. And then all of a sudden it leads into this we can't trust food dyes and processing. And therefore, why are we putting chemicals in our body? And we need to be anti vaccine and everything
Mhm.
has to be clean. And it like swings
Yeah.
in the other way. And I think it is like a distrust of the system, which is interesting because it's not like the FDA is out there trying to kill people. Like they really are trying
True.
to keep us all alive. And it's also like a very privileged thing, which I think we'll talk about a lot with this, where it's like you're spending hours making a loaf of bread that is available at the store. And it's great that you can do that with whole organic ingredients, maybe even that you grew yourself. But is that realistic for the majority of people?
'Cause, like, that is
No.
expensive and yeah, and here is the other part of it is I do think that the trickiest part is that, like, for some of these things, they do have a point. There are a lot of preservatives and chemicals in our foods, and
Yeah.
that is something that, we should maybe make sure we're wary of, like, the fact it's up time and time again, like, how many foods are banned in other countries, but we have it here in America. Yeah, there is a conversation for that. 2, I totally agree that it is probably better for me to have a handmade or a homemade loaf of bread where it's flour, sugar, butter, whatever,
Yeah.
than a loaf from the store with all these preservatives. I can see how eventually that could have effects on my body. I'm sure there's truth in that. The other part of it, yeah, the world is really hectic and we would probably all have better mental health if we were growing our own food. Like if we could take hours and make ourselves a beautiful loaf of bread and eat it with our families and our loved ones. Yeah, I'm sure my mental health would be crazy better, if that was my life. And if I
Yeah.
slowed down and I was more intentional, I am sure all of those things are true. But like you said, there's this immense privilege of even having that as an option that is
Yeah.
just unfortunately not available. And in a dream world, though, maybe it would be. And so, like I said, like that almost makes it the hardest part where it's like they have a point, but like, how does it go so far?
But
Like,
like
not like that.
in a dream world, honestly, none of us would have to work, right? You wouldn't have to have a
Exactly.
working
Yeah.
parent and a stay-at-home parent. You would just have we would all just be home doing whatever we want, right?
Yeah, exactly. We wouldn't have any
Yeah.
responsibilities or anything to do ever. We could just chill.
Yeah, but that's just not
Yeah.
ideal. No, it's ideal. It's just not realistic, like,
Yeah.
in the
Yeah,
world
that's
we live
true.
in, and maybe that is a problem. There was this article from the Washington Post about stay-at-home girlfriends and,
Mhm.
like, the idea of feminine leisure, and I actually really loved this article, but she talks about how women have gone from marrying high school sweethearts or things like that to twisting the gold digger narrative into finding a man who's
Oh.
already, like, fixed, is what they call
Mhm.
it. Like, he's already established, probably 10 years older. One woman named Christy, she said she wanted a man that some other woman had already fixed up and who in turn could fix her. Not a partner, she writes, but a mentor, specifically one who could fulfill a promise that feminism had allegedly failed to deliver. I had grown bored of discussions of fair and unfair, equal or unequal, she writes Christy, and preferred instead to consider a thing called ease. And so that's the way they're looking at it, is if I marry a guy who's already established in his career, who's making enough money to the point where I don't have to work, I can just do whatever I want. That's so much easier than the alternative of living life. It's crazy to think of because that's just such a fantasy. And yet so many people are outliving it. And it even says the elusiveness of rest for everyone in the modern era is a beautiful thing to think of. She even brings up the fact that people used to ask her, "What's your dream job?" She never knew the answer. I realized it's because I don't dream of labor. I dream of living a soft, feminine life. I dream of feminine leisure.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna make a quick point on that. Is I think that's something that like people have really attached themselves to. Of what's your dream job? Oh, I don't dream about labor. Okay, that's fine. Like we exist in a capitalist society that prioritizes your labor over everything. We can critique that. I don't think it is a good thing about you if someone say, "What do you want to do with your life?" and you say nothing. I think that it requires internal work. And maybe that's me having a hot take, but like, you don't have to say, "I want to go be a CEO, girl boss, and make $1 million." You don't have to do that. And you don't even have to be a job, but it's like there's nothing that you want to do with your life rather than just be comfortable for the rest of your life. I just don't feel like that's good for you. And I don't think you're actually going to be happy and find any fulfillment in your life if that's how you're operating.
Not good for you. I don't think you would find any fulfillment. It's basically opting out.
It's opting out of
that part.
discomfort. And I've been listening to Dopamine Nation, which is a book. I've been on audiobook this week and I'm not finished with it, but she talks a lot about like the pleasure and pain, kind of like receptors in your body, and how like those actually need to be on a scale, and how our current like society has pretty much been built up to avoid any type of discomfort, and how that is like essentially worse. Like it's making us more uncomfortable that we don't have any tools to feel any type of discomfort. So to say, "Oh, I want a life of ease," it's like, well, okay, of course everyone does, but like to say that there's nothing beyond that, like that's so dangerous for yourself. And another thing I was thinking about too, when it was like, "Oh, I just want a man who can fix me. I want a man to be my mentor." And I'm gonna put an asterisk here of like, this isn't saying like the lonely man epidemic or whatever. I'm not saying that. But I don't think it's right to dehumanize men that way and not allow them to not be perfect. Like, personally, I met someone when I was 19 years old. We grew together, we graduated college together, and have found our careers together. That has been a beautiful, fulfilling thing in my life, is to grow with the person and see a person I love become a better version of themselves, to see them as a person, see them throughout their flaws. Like, not to put my relationship as the pinnacle, like that is a growing, beautiful thing. And to demand a partner to not be a real person, gross. Like that is so dehumanizing.
I think it's so interesting too. She brings up this thing from the Wall Street Journal. They found that with the journal's social indicators research found that regardless of how the question is asked or what measure they used, women say that they are more anxious, more depressed, more tired, and more pessimistic than men. At the same time, though, women are also more likely to say that they are happy and satisfied with their lives. It's a phenomenon known as the female happiness paradox, and researchers really can't explain it. One thing in the article said that the measuring stick is off. Men, after all, are the ones who die more often by suicide, drug overdoses, and alcoholism. So maybe it's not the fact that they are less anxious and depressed than women, but that conditioned to be taciturn, they're less likely to report it. Another thing is the thing that stress women out. Children, relationship building, achieving work-life balance are also the things that give them the most satisfaction. So regardless of how to interpret the data, the facts of the matter remain that women are either miserable but happy or happy but miserable. And if scientific research can't figure it out, what on earth are 20-year-old women supposed to do?
No, but that is so true and so interesting. Like that paradox. And like we said, it's like with the woman's like, I just want a life of ease, like she's objectively going to look at her life and be like, I have a good, happy life. I wouldn't want to change anything. But like, she's not going to, there's no fulfillment there.
Yeah.
So you're going to keep having issues.
And then also her husband's narrative is almost completely missing. And that's the thing
Yeah.
from a lot of these tradwives or these stay-at-home girlfriends or stay-at-home moms, if they're influencing online and talking about everything, but their husband is like off breadwinning. What's his whole relationship to this? Does he enjoy the fact that there's someone taking care of all of the menial activities? Because that would be pretty nice. It's like having
of
a
course.
maid, a nanny, a housekeeper,
Which
and
does
a
bring
cook.
the point that a stay-at-home mom is very much like, you are contributing a lot to your household, and that is something that should be respected for what you are contributing.
But at the same time, is there like a level of kind of missing in that as well, where it's like you don't really feel like a partner in your own home and your only job is to go to work and come home and that's your entire measure of being?
That's what I'm exactly like. I feel like it sets up both sides to not even be able to view like each other as actual people with flaws and desires and complicated thoughts and desires, that like need to usually be explored. If it's like, you're woman, so your job this, your man, so your job this, and if there's anything to say, I don't get it. Like that doesn't set up either parties here for anything good.
I also think it sets up the notion that, okay, then what happens if the economy has a downturn? Heaven forbid.
What's that like?
And suddenly your husband, who's the breadwinner, loses his job. Then what?
Yeah, then what? Then what is he there for? Seems like he can't serve his function anymore.
Because if you're a stay-at-home girlfriend and you're living off of your content royalties, then technically you guys are going to be fine.
True.
But what's his
suddenly
purpose,
if
then?
he's not fulfilling his role here, are you interested anymore? Is he interested anymore? Like is this a relationship here? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it puts that into question of what happens when inevitably
something changes. Yeah, of course.
Yes, because that's life. So something with Nara Smith that I thought was really interesting, I saw a video clip of her talking about how her second or third pregnancy, I think, or might have even been her fourth, went completely differently from the other ones because she was working during it. So she was like, here's realistically what it's like for me, and talking about how her husband had to take on some of the tasks at home because she had been on set, because she's, I think, a model as well. And I think he is also. Yeah. And so she was talking about how they've had to split domestic things differently because she was on set during most of her pregnancy. And so they like had to switch stuff around. And it's, that's a partnership. Congratulations. You've reached marriage. That's what it's like.
Yeah.
And yet that's something that her audience would never kind of prescribe to the idea of her being a part of. This idea of she's the breadwinner. First off, there's no way that he's making more money than her.
True.
But also the fact that, he helped out around the house and had to switch into some of these feminine activities, including parenting their children, their other children, because she couldn't handle it all while she was pregnant during her first trimester, dealing with like morning sickness and everything, and working on top of that. So it like taps into that narrative again of, is it even realistic? Are the people that are portraying this lifestyle, are they even actually living it themselves? And is that even what the fantasy would be? Like, does it ruin fantasy?
I think it's also just like, at a certain point, like, it is a level of narcissism too, where it's, if you're only viewing your partner for what they do for you as opposed to what you could do for your partner, and how you guys are both contributing to make this work. Like I said, it's like, it's a certain level of narcissism of, let's be serious here. Let's exist outside of ourselves and realize that it's I think people are talking about like the dangers of people being like, I just make choices and I don't care about other people's feelings, and you shouldn't have to carry or cater to other people's feelings. It's all about you. And it's like, no, that's like a horrible
way to view it.
You can't, and you shouldn't just do that. You should be very conscious about the way that your decisions affect other people, because we live in a society, and it's good to engage community, build your community, and to build a community, you have to be uncomfortable.
Even going back to the princess treatment that we talked about last week, I think a little bit. And in this video, if you've seen it or missed the conversation, I was talking about how she taps into her like princess treatment and maintains her feminine energy by making her husband do certain, not even making him, how would you explain it? Like by not letting herself do certain things
and expecting and like not getting out of the car till he would open the door, like
not talking to the wait staff until the husband is back, like not even communicating with them, not ordering for herself, like none of these things. And it started this thing online. First off, who wants a partner like that? But it's checking off, like you talked about, it's avoiding having to participate in society in any way at all. You literally turned yourself into an object that is there. And you're considering that you're above it. That's princess treatment. I am above talking to all these people. I do not have to order my own food. I do not have to open my own door. I don't have to do any of this. And since when is that feminine energy?
When? Yeah, exactly. I've seen another video that she did where someone like responded of, what do you do for your husband? And she's, I do a lot for my husband. Like I serve him, but I am the princess. The children aren't the princess. The dog isn't the princess. My husband isn't the princess. I am the princess. So I'll be treated this way. And it's, listen, like at a certain point, you just sound like a 3-year-old having a temper tantrum, but a well-mannered temper tantrum of being like, no, I think I'm really special. So I deserve to be treated this way. And of course, we should be respected by the people we choose to have in our lives. We shouldn't tolerate disrespect, but there's a
difference.
Yeah, like we live in a world. Be so serious.
And yeah, it's going back to even like that refusing to feel uncomfortable in any way possible. It's okay. I could see an extreme introvert kind of being like, oh, this is a really easy way for me not to have to talk to a stranger ever again.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. It just doesn't, we can't function like that. Like it just, you cannot tap out completely and expect everything to just work.
That's true because it's, I mean, like you just said, like discomfort and continuously stretching yourself, putting yourself out of your comfort zone, allowing yourself to sometimes be in uncomfortable situations, not unsafe, but discomfort in any type of way, like that, the way that you grow and then therefore get satisfaction as a person. Like you're not going to fill this empty hole inside of you because you're finally getting the princess treatment that you think you deserve. Like that's not going to be the way that you feel good about yourself because it's coming external too, the way that you're being treated here and how you are forcing the world to interact with you. It has nothing to do with doing something of merit.
No, definitely. There is an article from a blog called When Being the Bavarian Other Reemerges as a Social Media Trend. And it comes from the book The Second Sex by Simone de Beauvoir. Have you read that?
I haven't read it. No. Jordan
haven't
has,
either.
but oddly, but I haven't.
This actually made me really want to read it. She's talking about how readers who are familiar with Simone de Beauvoir's work may notice a striking similarity between the life of a Tradwife and Beauvoir's description of the life of a woman as the other in The Second Sex. Since Beauvoir's phenomenological analysis of women's lived experiences in the second sex can enrich our understanding of the lived experiences of the Tradwives and enhance our moral and political evaluation of the Tradwife phenomenon. And then she goes on to describe how Beauvoir's analysis of the women's situation, namely the other. But one thing that she talks about it is that meaningful projects are typically creative productions, such as writing a novel, transcendent activities, things that don't solely contribute to one's physical survival or the replication of one's biological life. Creating art, creating music, working, even like you're participating in society, you're evolving as a human, you're doing things that contribute
are things
to the
that
output.
Cause a lot of discomfort, even if you love doing them.
Yes, so much discomfort, way more than sometimes you think. You're like, oh, life as an artist is going to be so nice. No. However, then she talks about that domestic activities such as housekeeping, childbearing, and childcare are imminent activities that only contribute to one's physical survival and the replication of one's biological life, which makes sense, right? Those are necessary things, but they're things that aren't evolving you to a higher plane. They're just things that you have to do. They're just part of
because you
life.
Have to make meals, you have to care for your children. Of course you do. And those are good things.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that they're not meaningful. They are. They're a part of your livelihood. Yeah, like they are essential to your life, but they're not the same as creative production. And so she talks about how women over time have been given this group of the other where they're not allowed to participate in the creative production part. In their own like inventive areas, those are reserved for men. And so this otherness is purely for these domestic activities, allowing men to engage exclusively in producing creative production and moving forward the world. And then women are exclusively for survival.
Yeah.
And like what that would do to like it's in the feminine mystique too. What does that do to someone when you turn them purely into, okay, you have to do this so we can survive. And other than that, you are not allowed to expand your mind. You're not allowed to invent anything. You're not allowed to seek out a better narrative for the world. Like you are solely for our survival.
Totally. And yeah, it takes away so much individuality if it's, oh, who are you? Oh, I'm a stay-at-home girlfriend. Oh, so who you are is your relationship to somebody else. Oh, I'm just a mom. Oh, I'm a wife, which I think it's an incredible thing to be a wife. I think it's an incredible thing to be a mom. If that's the only thing you're using to identify yourself, like what's left? Who are you?
Yeah.
Well,
no, you lose the connection to yourself as a human being, who you are, who you exist on the inside as an individual.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important thing in motherhood that a lot of women talk about struggling with, that like you lose a little bit of the sense of who you are individually and have to find that again. And like how much harder would that be if then you turn around and your entire narrative of existing is solely in your relationship to your kids, to your house, and your husband.
Absolutely. Something that I wanted to talk about is this twist in the narrative that they will sell, like these tradwives on the internet, where a lot of self-identified tradwives will use very feminist rhetoric, frame their choices as like an empowered thing. I'm sure with like princess treatment, I am a woman and I deserve to be respected. Like take this very feminist language, saying things like, is it as a big tenet of feminism not to have control and choice over your life? So would that not include activities like homesteading, gardening, wearing makeup, or knitting? Did feminists of yore not die to give up the right to choose your own life path, even if that path is a traditional one? I feel like that's like the main argument that I see is like, they're like, no, like I'm choosing this. So even if you don't agree with it, I'm a woman, so I have the right to choose. I would like to talk a little bit about choice feminism. I've been seeing people talk about a lot where it takes feminism from being an ideology, which is that men and women should be treated equally in society, and it's instead saying feminism is just a woman's right to choose. Now, like I said, definitionally, if we're going to look at the definitions of both words, they're not like, that's not what feminism is. Feminism is the advocacy of women's rights on the basis of the equality of the sexes. So to say, therefore, I'm a woman, so therefore anything that I might choose is feminist, it's not true.
No.
And I don't know, it's just like this really crazy thing that I think they've twisted this narrative of, no, I'm a feminist because I'm doing this, because it's a female-led activity. It's a woman-centered. And just because something is female-led or woman-centered doesn't mean it's inherently feminist.
No.
And here's the thing is, sometimes that's okay. It doesn't have to be, like I was talking to Jordan about this earlier, preparing for this episode, where I was just like, I'm not going to sit here and claim that like me getting married as a 20-year-old was a feminist act. I think I should have gotten married. I think it was a good thing that I did with my life. There was nothing feminist though about that choice, and that's okay. Like not everything you do in your life is going to be perfectly with an ideology, and that's okay.
That would be
I don't
so
know.
tiring. Like
Exactly. You can't do it.
No, you can't. And I don't think you should with any ideology in reality.
Exactly.
Like you just can't base your entire life off of the ideals of something like that. It just,
and
that's
you don't,
the point. People are dynamic. You have to make different decisions based on things. Like you have to.
And women using the word feminism to justify any and every life choices, all it does is water down what feminism is. Like you are practicing feminism when you go and vote. Granted, there's another level of this where it's so much of our everyday life is inherently political, and I know that, like, politics affect everything, so by some argument, you could say actually everything that you do as a woman is affected by feminism, of course. But at the same time, like, just because you're a woman making a choice doesn't mean you are acting in the name of feminism. Like,
No.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
just, yeah, I can't stand it. It's been like my biggest like thing that I just can't stop thinking about lately.
Especially if you're a woman choosing to actively be oppressed or romanticize
Yeah,
oppression.
romanticizing oppression isn't, yes, that's an interesting way to say it.
Yeah, then that's not feminist. It
Mhm.
doesn't you're not making life better for women out there. You're not promoting equality. It's very anti-feminist actually to
Yeah.
sit there because there's women who can't choose, who don't get
Yeah.
to decide to be stay-at-home moms, who don't get to decide to only rear their children, who don't get to decide that's what
Yeah.
they want to do. They're forced into it. And by making this more of an idealized thing, it's promoting that lifestyle as being okay and being a feminist option, when in reality,
Mhm.
we all know that it's not.
Yeah.
Let's not pretend that forcing women to stay at home and making men go to work is feminist. That's for
Yeah, it's
either
not feminist. And
no.
and listen, if you are in your life and you have the opportunity to do that and you choose that for yourself and you're happy in it, awesome. You don't need to use feminism to justify it. You can just say,
No.
I'm choosing this. And if that's something that you find joy in, congratulations. But to then go on the internet and say, no, this is feminist. And if you disagree
And
with me,
yeah.
you're oppressing me and you're putting me down as a woman. No,
And
people are
then
allowed to critique your life choices. I'm sorry.
And then turning around and saying, "This is the idealized version of
And this
life,
is,
and we all
yes.
should be aiming for this." That's a whole other level where it's,
Yeah, that's
"Excuse
exactly
me,
it.
since when does that work for everyone?" It's
Yeah.
not realistic, but it's also just not a good promotion
Yeah.
of things. Because you know what? Some women have abusive husbands, some women
True.
have deadbeat husbands, some women don't have husbands. It's
Mhm.
ridiculous to sit there and say, "This is the idealized version, this is what everyone should be doing," when that's just not realistic for everybody. And a
Mhm.
lot of people don't even want that. There's just so much to it that it's just stop. Like, you don't need to push this
Stop.
on everybody else.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
in this same article about Simone de Beauvoir, she talks about how I'm going to read this paragraph and then it said, however, some may point out that inauthentic tradwives are not morally criticizable than other inauthentic individuals, especially those who live inauthentically despite their social privilege. Moreover, the critique of women's embodiment of otherness as inauthentic does not adequately address the problematic political implications of the tradwife lifestyle as a relatively long-standing social media trend. That although real-life tradwives live similar lives as Beauvoir and others, modern tradwife influencers are not comparable as they engage in transcendent work. A typical tradwife influencer, such as Neilman or Petit, does not merely ensure the physical and biological survival of her family and herself. The artisanal sourdough and cheese made from unpasteurized fresh milk are arguably products of creative production, along with the aesthetically pleasing social media content. Also, tradwife influencers who do not fully do what they preach may remain financially independent from their husbands by making a good living from their content, merchandise, and affiliated products. Beauvoir notes that the financial independence as is in practice a precondition for existential freedom since it allows one to pursue meaningful projects without being under the mercy of other people. This
Mm.
means that tradwife influencers who are financially independent and engage in creative production live viably different lives compared to real tradwives who are financially dependent on their husbands and families. By falsely promising that returning to the good old days is a preferable choice, tradwife influencers may be complicit in the impression of women who are lured to embody otherness. And I thought that was super important, like going into everything we've talked about, where it's like they're not living authentic tradwife lifestyles,
Yeah.
but they're promoting this level of otherness of forcing women to not have transcending is the word
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
thinking. Yeah, to not have activities that transcend just survival. They're
Yeah.
promoting that.
Interesting. I've seen another take on this actually too,
Yeah.
where I saw a woman talking about how she wears a date collar. Okay. And I don't really know exactly what it is, something she wears, whatever, that shows her allegiance to her husband, which is interesting to me because aren't that what wedding rings are? And someone shared it and stitched it, and they were like, at a certain point, you are just proudly displaying what you're sexual kinks are, and you're not aware that's what you're doing. And I was like, "Oh my gosh." Yeah, that's kind of what it is. Like, it's normalizing this thing as being like, "This is the ideal way of doing it." But it's no. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that's a I don't she
Yeah.
used a certain frame or, like, verbiage of it that I was like, "Oh, that's so like, a better way of doing it." But I think, like, that just adds another thing of, like, submission doesn't actually inherently equal good, and, like, maybe you're just, like, almost like creating fetish content online,
In a
with
way.
this dynamic by
Yeah.
talking about why you want to wear a day collar and why you submit to your husband, you know what I mean? Oh,
Yeah.
shoot, that's an interesting point that to not think about.
A lot of the Tradwife content has even turned into that because they talk about like
Mhm.
the barefoot in the kitchen cooking
Yeah.
and how that's become such an idealized thing. It's actually really interesting too. A lot of women who used to be like really independent, like feminists have turned into these like Tradwives. There's this is like weird. There's this OnlyFans creator that I used to follow on YouTube,
Mhm.
but not for her OnlyFans content. She would just
That's
do
okay,
vlogs
yeah.
and stuff. And but I knew that she did OnlyFans, but she, like, would just do fun vlogs and, like, home
Mhm.
decor stuff and talk about things, and she made enough money with OnlyFans that she bought, like, a house out in the country, and then all of a
Mhm.
sudden turned into a tradwife, and now is, like,
Mm.
making OnlyFans content, but under the guise of being a tradwife, and it's so completely different
Oh.
from where she was and, like, what she
Mhm.
actually like, she, like, smoked weed, like, she, like,
I
very liberal, and then turned into this, like, trad wife, like, out in her garden, like, picking vegetables, wearing a sundress, and it was just like,
Mhm.
"Whoa," like, "What happened?" And it almost makes you think, "Ooh, did she realize that there was, like, more money in this niche
Mhm.
than there was
It's
in her previous?"
It's so interesting how these so quickly turn into a stripping of individuality. You know, here's the thing, maybe along the way, people would say, like, "Oh, but, like, she got rid of bad habits," you know, like, maybe it wasn't good how much weed she was smoking. I don't know. None of my I don't know, actually, but that's just an example, you know, of maybe
Yeah.
people lose bad habits along the way, but, like, also to, like, then just become another I think you lose, like, the individuality of what was it about you though? Now you just look like everyone else here, and I think
Mhm.
that gets very dangerous when womanhood becomes a uniform and not something that each individual person can decide for themselves of what that looks like.
Yeah, there's no denying it's on the rise right now. It's trending
Totally.
to
Mhm.
be that way. There was like a huge convention a couple of weeks ago by the MAGA movement where they invited a bunch of young conservative, God-fearing women to come and then talked
Mhm.
about how important it was for them to find husbands and marry young and make
Yeah,
babies and
have children.
yeah, and they had quite a good turnout. There was a lot of women there, and conservatism is rising for the younger generation. And I think in a lot of ways, like, yeah, it's really easy in life to have someone
Yeah.
tell you this is exactly what you should do. This is
Mhm.
exactly why it works, and have that pathway of, oh, see, it's worked for millions of years without the context of, no, it
No,
freaking
it wasn't
wasn't.
working. Yeah,
It
that's
wasn't.
that is something that's interesting to look at, is obviously there are so many flaws in the modern world. There are mental illness, like there's so many things that are happening that would make someone want to say, I need to change something. I need to look outward. I need to look elsewhere. I want to make a change in my life. And those are great things. But like you said, like this whole argument of like, oh, well, what was in the past? We were happier because this. That painting a full accurate picture, one. And yeah, like I said, why can't we progress and move forward and find new solutions as
Yeah.
opposed to regressing to something that it didn't work then? Because if it worked, we wouldn't have gotten here in the first place.
We would have never moved away from it. If the
We wouldn't have
women were
had to.
happy
If
staying at
everyone was
home,
happy.
no one would have fought against it. We wouldn't have be where
Exactly.
we are now, but we
Mhm.
are. So, yeah, like, finding new
Yeah.
solutions would be way better, and, yeah, the whole Tradwife movement, it's baking sourdough isn't gonna save your life. I'm sorry. Like, I really wish it would.
It'll probably
But
get
it's
some
just not enough.
momentary happiness with a good piece of bread and butter. That is
Mhm.
a joyful moment. But I wanted to read 2 little quotes just about choice feminism because I feel like it summarizes
Yeah.
it just so well. Linda Hirschman wrote a book, Get to Work: A Manifesto for Women of the World. It came out in 2006, and I think she was the first person to use that term, choice feminism, kind of wives, and she just said, "Choice feminism is the shadowy remnant of the original movement, and it tells women that their choices, everyone's choices, the incredibly constrained choices they made, are good choices." And in an essay, which is Choice Feminism and the Fear of Politics, which is by a scholar, Michelle Ferguson, argues that choice feminism emerges in response to the accusations of feminism being too radical, exclusionary, and judgmental. So it tries to seek the opposite of that. Quote, understood as an orientation, choice feminism has 3 important features. First, it understands freedom as the capacity to make individual choices and oppression as the inability to make a choice. Consequently, as long as a woman can say that she has chosen to do something, it is considered by choice feminists to be an expression of liberation. Second, since the only criterion for evaluating women's freedom is individual choice, we should abstain from judging the content of the choices women make. It is definitionally impossible for a woman to choose her own oppression. All choices she make are equally expressions of her freedom and therefore equally to be supported. Finally, the view of freedom is supported by a particular historical narrative. It is the women's movement in the past that has made it possible for women to make free choices in the present. So I just felt like that was like such a great way to summarize that of like, I don't know. I just we can make bad choices and other people can make bad choices. And while when we approach people and viewing people, we should be so conscious as to not be judgmental and we should be loving, I think it's also okay that we label sometimes the choices we make as bad choices and recognize that other people maybe aren't making the best choices for themselves, and or we need to be critiquing what we're seeing happening, and we should be allowed to do that without being opposed to being like, you don't support women. Like, give me a break.
Definitely. No, I don't think there was anything wrong with the article about Hannah Nealman and talking about, like,
Mm-mm.
maybe she shouldn't have chosen the life of that she did. Like, maybe
Yeah.
she would be better fulfilled if she had gone on to be a ballerina after Juilliard. She went to Juilliard, guys. Like,
She went to Juilliard, yeah.
she was really good.
Like, maybe it's a sad thing she gave that up, actually.
Yeah. And even though it says that she's happy and fulfilled with the life she has, and I'm sure some part of her is, you never know what that other path is. And if her husband wouldn't have insisted on her getting pregnant in
Yeah.
college, even though she said no, would she have the life that she has now? Was she
Mhm.
actually the one making the choices in the
Yeah.
situation? There's just so much more to it. And I think it's okay to critique that, to look at that and be like, no, like maybe we should consider this from a different perspective.
And to
Yeah.
I think it allows you to do that for yourself, be
Yeah.
able to take a stock at your life and understand why you made the choices you did, and then that way you can not do it again, or you can be more intentional the second time you make a choice. I think that to critique the world around you is to better critique the world that you are living in, and therefore, like, how you operate and move in the world. And in the end, like, that's only gonna be a good thing for you.
And also, by doing that, I think we're also preparing ourselves for the next generation too. If
Mhm.
we're trying to make the world better for the people who come after us, our children, our nieces, our nephews, whatever, then
Yeah.
wouldn't you want to be able to look at all of the choices that are made and say, hey, like, I made this decision. I probably should have done this. Hey, so and so made this choice. Don't you think maybe it would have turned out a little bit better if they had done it this way?
Yeah.
Shouldn't we be wanting to do that, to give as many
Yeah.
options as possible?
I mean, it's so hard because, like, obviously, I'm not saying, "So judge your neighbors and
Yeah,
and
no.
judge them," but I don't know, not every choice we make is inherently empowering, and that's
Yeah,
okay,
it
and
is
I
okay.
think to be able to look at your own life and recognize where it wasn't that, it's like I said, it's okay. Me getting married at 20 was
Right.
not me being a feminist icon. I'm fine, that's fine, I'm not gonna hear and be like, "Because of feminism, I have the right to choose at 20." It's no, like, that's not feminist. It's okay,
Mhm.
girl. I don't know. Again, no, it's hard. I'm like, wait, did I just like argue on behalf of judging others for the last hour? No.
But like,
But
I think
I
it's
don't know.
okay sometimes. Like, it's not okay to sit there and then turn to them and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're doing this,
Totally.
blah, blah, blah.
Don't
But when you're
gossip.
looking at your own life and like
Mhm.
trying to make decisions, shouldn't you be judging the people around you so that you make better choices for yourselves?
Or more, I think if people are saying, I am making an amazing choice because I'm a feminist, I think you can stop
Yeah.
and look at that and say, I don't know if that's a feminist choice. And you know what? That's either okay or that's not okay. And you can decide that for yourself in your own life.
Yeah.
You don't have to
I
tell
don't
people
know
what to
either.
do, but you can have plenty of thoughts about it.
No, I think it's important to have thoughts about things that happen around us, especially if it's public figures. Well, I'm going to say it. Go ahead
Yeah.
and judge public figures all you want because,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't think listen, I've seen some podcasters talk about that of like public figures, that's what group chats are for. You can go on in
Yeah.
your group chats and your private conversations and you can say whatever you want. You don't need to take it to their DMs, you don't need to take it to their comment section. You don't need to be weird.
Mm-mm.
But by all means, take that to the group chat. And you know what? That's
Yep.
fine.
I do think it's fine. I think it's okay to have some healthy discourse going on about
Yeah.
things. But yeah, we don't necessarily need to, let's not start doxing people or anything crazy.
Of
That's
course not.
ridiculous.
I don't advocate for
Yeah.
doxing. And also too, be aware that there's reasons why people make their choices. Whether
Yeah.
it's to try and seek a better life, and that's what we're all doing at the end of the day. Just because we
Mhm.
don't think that's going to actually get them happiness, we're all trying to find, So
Yeah.
there's
And
grace
I
that can
think
be applied to everyone with that.
and maybe that's the thing to realize with the whole feminist movement is I think the whole point of it was realizing that there's not one specific path for every single person. And that's one
Mhm.
of the most beautiful things in life that there
Yeah.
is that we can choose different things. And that option should remain open for everyone. We don't need to have an idealized version of what it should be
Mhm.
for everybody.
We don't need to make
Let's
it
just let
uniform
everyone
again. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just let everyone do their own thing. I think the world turns out better that way.
I agree. Absolutely. That into a wandering rant, but I feel fulfilled after it. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, no, I think this is good. And I think if this inspired you and you want to go and read some things, I think we've got Simone de
Mm.
Beauvoir's The Second Sex. You could also go read The Feminine Mystique by Betty Friedman, personal favorite
Mhm.
of ours. I will try to remember to link all of these articles. Yes, so that you can go and check these out as well. And yeah.
We'll be back. We're back every Monday. So here, come say hi on Instagram, morethanmuse.podcast, or check us out anywhere you listen. And we'll be back next week and every
Bye.
week. Bye.